In the Dharma Expanse Palace of Akanishta is the essence of all Buddhas at 3 times, who shows me directly my mind is Dharmakaya. I prostrate to the glorious exalted Guru. Please bless me and all sentient beings that our minds become the Dharma. Bless us that the Dharma become the path. Bless us that the path dispel confusion. Bless us that confusion arise as wisdom. And so I'd like to say Tashidede to all my friends in Malaysia who have asked for this teaching, as well as to everyone else who happens to listen to it. Of course, we've had a little bit of a time delay in between the beginning of the teachings at the beginning of the Wesak month, according to the Chinese and Theravada calendars, and whenever this ends up being broadcast. But still, it's fine. It's a good opportunity to think about the Dharma. And as I said at the beginning, these are all individual little teachings that we can each take on their own, but there is a collection of them. So we will continue with this discussion of the collection of the String of Pearls, a collection of Dharma talks by the Lord GAMPOPA. So as we listen to these Dharma talks, it's important for us first to have a good motivation. And that motivation, ideally, we should have the motivation of bodhicitta, the wish to achieve Buddhahood, the wish to be able to bring all sentient beings to the state of complete happiness. And the only true state of lasting happiness is the state of Buddhahood. Everywhere else is kind of partial, not all the way there. Even if we become a bodhisattva, a great bodhisattva on the levels like, like Nagarjuna or Shantideva, we're still not a Buddha. We're still not quite there. We still can't do quite as much. It's said that the difference in qualities between a bodhisattva on the 10th level and a Buddha is as great as the difference between the amount of water that will fit in an ox's hoof print and that which will fill the ocean. So if we really want to bring true benefit to ourselves and other sentient beings, then we have to try to achieve Buddhahood. And so if we can listen to the Dharma with that motivation, then that is the best motivation. Now, of course, achieving Buddhahood is not something that we necessarily can do in one lifetime. We could do it in one lifetime if we are as diligent as Milarepa. We could do it in one lifetime, but most of us aren't that diligent yet. And so we have to take it where we are and do what we can and recognize that even if we only make one step towards Buddhahood in this lifetime, at the end of this lifetime, we'll still be a step closer to our goal. We might also, if we're honest with ourselves, we might look at ourselves and say, well, we don't really realize, we don't really have any idea what Buddhahood is and what does it mean to say that we're going to achieve Buddhahood. So if you think to yourself that you're listening to these teachings with the idea that you want to bring as much benefit as you can to yourself and other sentient beings, and that if you can even try to think maybe even benefits that you can't even conceive of right now, and please, this is also a good motivation. You can listen with this motivation as well. In any case, whenever we start the Dharma, whenever we start practicing, whenever we start listening or talking to or teaching, it's important for us to start with a good motivation. In fact, anything we do, we should start with a good motivation. So please keep a good motivation in mind as you listen to these teachings. And so we are continuing with the String of Pearls, a collection of Dharma talks by GAMPOPA. And we are on the 8th talk. And as I've done in the previous teachings, I will read the talk and then go back and speak about a few points that I have things to say about, gloss over things where I haven't much to say, but I'll go over everything. At any rate, just listening to GAMPOPA's words is a complete teaching in itself. So for GAMPOPA's words, he wrote, actually he spoke, I shouldn't say. GAMPOPA spoke these teachings, and then Gongsul wrote them down later. So in GAMPOPA's own words, as for the Dharma I would like to share with you all, there is no time in life. You must inspire yourself with the spurs of remembering this in your being, and then entrust your mind to the gurus and the jewels. What this means is that life is impermanent. In the rare instance you live long, there is not much time to sit around, and there is no one beside the guru to show you the path. All the Buddhas of the three times awakened to Buddhahood because of gurus, so following a guru is important. As it is said, before you have a guru, there is not even the word Buddha. Thus, following a guru and listening to what they say is important. You need to place your hopes in the source of refuge, the three jewels. For us practitioners, there is no source of refuge other than the jewels. If you truly entrust your mind to the jewels, there is no doubt that you will get all you want and need in this and future lives. Once you have entrusted your mind to the guru and the jewels, in the tradition of Aro Yeshijune sums up the practice in 3 words: appearing, occurring, and being. You must practice these 3. What these 3 words mean is appearing as what? Occurring as what? If it is, what is it? When we look outward at appearances, they occur variously, they appear variously. When we look at ourselves, our own mind essence appears in various ways. Our own mind occurs in various ways. Both appearing and occurring are our own mind's thoughts. Those thoughts themselves are our mind essence. Since that is how it is, they arise from our mind essence, so it is the Dharmata itself occurring variously. Appearances occurring is itself just the non-arising essence of our own mind. What makes appearances in mind indivisible is our mind essence itself. Thus they are the appearances of the mind. Know that your own mind is non-arising and meditate. Also meditate that the variety of sensations are the non-arising empty dharmakaya. Practice the non-arising nature of mind. There is no need to be alarmed by appearances. They are your own mind. No matter what arises, whether bliss, clarity, or non-thought, none of it transcends the essence of the Mahayana Dharmakaya. So it is important to meditate on the meaning of just that without even a moment's distraction. If you apprehend all appearances as being true, even though all appearances of the Dharmakaya, you will not transcend the 3 realms of samsara. Whether a worldly, a religious person or not, do not have biased compassion. Even falcons and wolves have biased love, but it does not help. Saying you only have compassion for your own children and grandchildren lacks the essence of compassion. That is called attachment. Attachment can be confused with compassion. All you clever folks give this some thought. Not having can be confused with not being attached. Since this is so, do not have compassion that is one-sided loving kindness and compassion. Instead, meditate on it impartially for sentient beings and instill it deep in your heart. Practice this without following your selfish wishes. To regarding the practice, the Dzogchen tradition sums it up in 2 sayings to practice, asserting that all phenomena that appear and exist are your own mind, and determining what that means. All phenomena that appear and exist are just this self-awareness. If you are happy, it is your mind that is happy, and if unhappy, it is your mind that is unhappy. As the scriptures say, the higher realms, lower realms, external world, and inhabitants are your own mind. In this way, determine that all phenomena of samsara and nirvana that appear and exist are your own mind and practice. That won't come in just a year or so. To practice, determine that the nature of your mind is non-arising. Among all the phenomena of appearance and existence, samsara and nirvana, there is nothing at all that is true and autonomous. Since they are empty of an essence, determine that the nature of mind is non-arising. There's not even any grasping at them as being a mere dream or illusion. Since awareness arises impartially, determine that the play of mind is unceasing. Within the nature of mind, being non-arising and ceasing, do not engage separately. Since they are like the ocean and waves, determine that the characteristic of mind is not non-dual. Since mere non-duality itself does not dwell as an object of mind and cannot be analyzed by mind or logic, determine that the mind is inherently liberated, non-dual in essence. You might wonder what the need for these 4 arguments is. For the danger that appearances will become self-existent, the nature is taught to be non-arising. For the danger that it would become the extreme of emptiness, it is taught to be an unceasing display. For the danger that it would be lost to the extreme of dualistic appearance, it is taught to have the characteristic of non-duality. Since thinking it is non-dual is called a view of conceptual experience, its essence is taught to be non-dual. In this way, the four arguments teach the refutations of the reality of the four extremes. So practice them until the mind's desires have been completely exhausted. There is no Dharma but that. So this is the talk by Gampopa. And in this talk, it's got a lot more high-level Dharma terminology, Dzogchen terminology, and Mahamudra terminology, the terminology of the master Aroyeshe Jumne, who was a contemporary of Gampopa's. So when we are looking at talks like this, when we're looking at teachings like this, sometimes we get very excited about them. People have different reactions. Some people get very excited about them and really want to practice them, and yet it's not so easy to just dive in and practice them. Other people think to themselves, I don't understand what that means, I give up. Go give me some easy teaching that I can do. And so there are two different, those are kind of two extremes, and I suppose some people might have an extraction, something in the middle. It's like, I don't understand what this is saying, but there's something that's there, but I don't quite get it. In any case, what we have to do is we have to be honest with ourselves about where we are. And at the beginning, as it says at the very beginning of the talk, the thing that we need to start out with is by remembering that there is no time in life. We haven't got a lot of time. We may think that we have time, but actually, if you look at it, we don't. Many of us don't really start practicing Dharma until we're well into adulthood. And who knows how long we're going to be in adulthood. Even if we're going to be around for a long time, you might think to yourself, well, I have to work and I have to support my family. I have to do all these things now. Then when I retire, I'm going to do Dharma practice, which is a wonderful thought if we are certain that we're actually going to live until retirement, that we're going to have the ability to practice at that time. Because it often happens that people think, I'm going to do something when I'm retired, and yet they're unable to do so because of their health or things that come up. So what we have to do is we have to find something that we can do in this lifetime now, that we can fit in our lives. Now, I think that for people who are engaged in a lifestyle where, you have a job, you have a business, you have a family, you have these things, you have commitments that you've made, and you maybe don't have really firm renunciation in your mind yet. You don't have real revulsion in your mind for samsara yet. So if you are in that position, having the thought that you want to practice the Dharma is excellent. And everything you do to practice the Dharma is excellent. But you have to recognize where you are and what you're doing. If you think to yourself, if you listen to a teaching like this and think, oh, therefore I need to devote myself to Dharma practice, well, you know that at this point you can't just leave your husband or wife, leave your children, leave your parents, leave your job, leave everything and go off and find some cave to meditate in. That's just not realistic at this point for many of you. But what you can do in this lifetime is you can take a look and see what is really beneficial for you in this lifetime. There are things in this lifetime that are enjoyable, but are they really beneficial? We can go to a restaurant with friends. It's enjoyable for a night. It might not be enjoyable if we eat too much and get indigestion. But even if it's enjoyable for a night, that enjoyment lasts for a night, and then we have a few memories. We might have a few pictures on our smartphones, but it's just one night and then it's gone. So you have to think about, what are you doing? What are you using your life for? You have to look at it. I'm not saying don't go out to restaurants with your friends. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you have to look. Be careful about what you're doing. Think about what is truly going to bring you benefit in the long term. What can you do to make yourself more of a Dharma person? What is it that you have to do? Think about that for yourself. Look at what's happening in your life. You're getting older each day. We're getting closer to death each day. And we frankly do not have any idea how many days we have, whether it is 10,000 days or one day. We cannot say for certain. So we have to use what time we can to do the Dharma practice we're able. And then when you get aware that you think about this, you remember how precious this opportunity we have, how precious it is. You think about that, and then take some time to do something that you can do, that you can fit into your life now. Maybe it's reciting some Mani mantras every day. You might feel to yourself, I'm just starting. And so if you do 100 Mani mantras every day, that is very good. It's not a lot, but it's very good. But what's most important now at the beginning is that you do something you can, and then you take it step by step by step. Because what you'll find is after a few days, you'll say, geez, 100 manis each day, that's pretty easy. I can do 300. And when you do 300, it's still only going to take you 3 minutes, maybe 4, maybe 5. It's not that long. 100 Mani mantras goes by pretty quickly. Or what you can do is you can take that 300 Mani mantras and do it in the morning. Do it at lunch. Do it in the evening. Maybe do it when you take a break. Maybe wander around saying manis more and more. And then as you do that, you do a little bit. You do what you can. Then you add a little bit more. And then you think, wow, I've done these Mani mantras. I can do something else. What else can I do? Oh, I can move on to the next practice that my mama tells you about. You can ask Lama Lodra in the center in PJ, or you can ask whoever your Lama is, and you can figure out, oh, what should I do next for where you are in your practice? You might find yourself able to start some sort of a daily practice on something that's a little bit even bigger than that. And as you do this, you'll see that the benefits of doing it really come from doing the practice consistently. So you start at the beginning, and as you do it, as you go through each of these steps, you need to always remember to think about impermanence. And always think about how you don't have a lot of time. You have to use your time well according to your capacities, and then you stretch your capacities. You stretch yourself just a little bit, not too much so that you break. You stretch yourself so you can do a little bit and a little bit more, remembering that you haven't got a lot of time. Sometimes you also remember how fortunate you are to have been able to meet the Dharma. How fortunate. So many of you have met Kenshin Trongpa Rinpoche. Many of you have met masters like the Karmapa. Some of you have probably met the Dalai Lama, other great masters. What an incredible fortune. And so thinking about this fortune. So sometimes you think about when you're feeling like, oh, I don't know if I can do the Dharma practice today. I suppose I should. Then you think about how fortunate you are, and you inspire yourself by thinking about what a great opportunity you have as a human being now when there is Dharma, in particular being a human being who's had the opportunity to meet great teachers and come into contact with great teachings. Then sometimes you're going to find yourself getting a little bit giddy. You're going to find yourself excited about something. Something's gone well at work or something, and that's going to kind of distract you. So at that time, you need to think, impermanence. This is not going to last. I don't know how much time I have. I really have to work on it. So you have to use these contemplations about the preciousness of human life and the impermanence in order to inspire you. Because there's not a lot of time to sit around. We may think that we're going to practice when we're retired, but we might not be able to do much of anything. We might just be shuffling from one doctor's appointment to the next. So we have to take the time now when we're able to do it. In the rare instance, as GAMPOPA says, in the rare instance that you live long, there is not much time to sit around, and there is no one beside the guru to show you the path. And so then when you find a guru, someone who is able to give you instructions that you are able to understand, someone that you relate to, and someone who has experience themselves, then they can guide you down the path so that you can go beyond the beginning stages, beyond these contemplations of impermanence, beyond the preliminary practices, so you can get some understanding of some of the higher teachings, such as the ones that are mentioned in this talk. Like when Gampopa speaks about the three words of Aro Yeshe Junne, the arising, occurring, and being. Well, these aren't such easy ideas to understand. And even when we understand the ideas, understanding ideas is not what is going to really benefit us. We have to gain some experience. We have to internalize it. We have to incorporate it into our own beings. And just listening, reading the teachings may inspire us to it. It may think, oh, I've got to learn about this, but we must not let ourselves be content with just having an intellectual understanding. Because then we may go on around and saying, oh, I understand what these three terms mean. I understand from this teaching of Gampopa what the Dzogchen tradition means. But understanding isn't going to help. We have to see and we have to experience. In order to get that seeing and experiencing, we have to go through the process of training, following the instructions of a qualified guru. So that's what we have to do. So rather than going through and explaining the details of this, which I myself can only do on an intellectual level, rather than that, I'm going to encourage everyone to try to practice the path where you are, develop yourself, develop your loving kindness and compassion so that you'll come to be able to understand it. What's really important so that we'll be able to understand it is we take the path as it comes. And that means that we have to develop revulsion, we have to develop loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta. We have to have revulsion for the things of desire, not meaning that we have to play act things and think and pretend that we don't like things that we actually do. It means that we have to understand that no matter how much we enjoy going to dinner with our friends, it's ultimately just one dinner with friends and it's over. We have to realize that what's really going to benefit us is the Dharma. And if we want to get to the point where we're going to be able to understand what is meant by the high teachings, such as Arya Junnes or the Mahamudra teachings or the Dzogchen teachings, then we have to begin by developing loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta. We have to go through these and go through these in order. And when we develop loving kindness and compassion, what's most important is that our loving kindness and compassion not be biased, that they be for all sentient beings. So when we start meditating on loving kindness and compassion, we have to start with people we can get feeling for. Traditionally, especially in the Theravada tradition, but also in some of the Tibetan explanations, it says, start with yourself. As it says in the 7 points of mind training, begin the sequence of sending and taking with yourself. When you start doing Tonglen meditation, you start doing it for yourself. Likewise, when you meditate on loving kindness, you have to feel loving kindness for yourself. You have to feel, I want to be happy. So you think of your future me, whatever that future me is going to be. It might be that future me as you think you're going to look tomorrow. It might be your future me as you think you're going to look in 10 years. It might be your future me in the next lifetime. In the essence, it's all the same. And you think, I really want to be happy in the future. And it's okay to want to be happy. I want to be happy. I want to practice the causes. I want to have the causes of happiness. And you think about that until you're really pretty comfortable. And this is actually a harder step. It sounds like it should be easy. We should think to ourselves, oh, of course I want to be happy. Of course I'll do the things that want to bring me happiness. And yet some of us actually have a lot more difficulty than others. So some people find it somewhat easy. Some people don't find it easy at all. But you keep meditating for a while until you really begin to get this feeling that, yeah, you do want to be happy. When you can understand it for yourself, then you take it to someone whom you love, perhaps your mother, someone whom you have an uncomplicated love. So you just recognize that person has always been there for me. I really love that person. So for many of us, it's our mother. That's why we always say mother. Of course, some people have, there are all sorts of mothers, and some people have trouble feeling that for their mothers. So you find someone, think of someone who's always been there for you. You meditate on loving kindness and compassion for that person. Then you meditate for friends. And then you meditate for people around you, people you don't really know. Then you have to meditate on loving kindness and compassion for people you don't like, people who harm you, people who have done bad things to you. You meditate this until you're able to do it for all of these people. And then you can go out and then meditate it for everyone in your city, everyone in your country, everyone in the world. go out and out and out and out until eventually you're able to do it for all sentient beings. And that's the beginning. Then you meditate on compassion for all these sentient beings. And again, you should go through the same sequence. And that is kind of like the second step. And then you meditate on bodhicitta, which is kind of thinking, all of these sentient beings are suffering. My mother is suffering. All these beings are suffering right now in this current situation. We can see really vividly right now that beings are suffering because we see it on the news when we see pictures of people who are in hospital, when we see pictures of people on the news who are upset because they have lost their jobs, when we talk to people who have lost their jobs. If we see them, if we're engaging in social distancing and lockdown, sometimes it's hard to meet these people. You might know people. You might have friends. You may well be one of those people yourself. You're having problems and difficulties in your lifetime. You may be one of the people who is sick or has been sick. And so thinking about all of these sufferings and thinking, what can we do? Because freeing ourselves from one suffering is, of course, important. But freeing ourselves and all sentient beings from all sufferings should be our goal. And that is the motivation of bodhicitta. So you work up to it. And once you have that motivation of bodhicitta, then when you come to the higher level teachings, such as Mahamudra, then you'll be able to actually understand them. It won't just be your mind. It just won't be an idea. It'll be something that you feel in your heart. It's not just intellectual anymore. It's something that you can incorporate in your being. I was giving a talk last year at a college in the United States, a one-off talk, and there was someone there who said, "Why do I need to meditate on bodhicitta for practicing Mahamudra?" And this is the point. There are a couple of points there. We have to have Mahamudra for one thing. One point is that realizing Mahamudra isn't so easy and it takes a lot of time. And if you are going to be able to realize Mahamudra or realize the actual meaning of the words that GAMPOPA uses in this text, then you have to work hard at it, and it's going to take years of meditation. Milarepa, for example, achieved Buddhahood in one lifetime and one body, but that meant that he spent, after he had built all the towers, he then spent a couple more years, I'm not exactly certain, 3, 4, 5 years with Marpa. Then he went off and he meditated in one cave for a year, another cave for a few years, then another cave for something like 12 or 20 years. And so he spent, all told, probably 30 years, 40 years meditating before he felt like he had really got to the result. So if you don't have a strong motivation, you just aren't going to be able to do that. So we have to work on the motivation. That's why we meditate on loving kindness, motivation, compassion, and bodhicitta, because that gives us a strong motivation, feeling like, I have to do something. There's no choice but to do it. And when you really feel that from the bottom of your heart, then you'll be able to do it. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is that when you're meditating on bodhicitta, what are you meditating on? You're meditating on the nature of your mind. And what is the nature of your mind? It's Buddhahood. It's the Dharmakaya itself. So if you don't want to become a Buddha, how can you meditate on Buddhahood? Why would you meditate on Buddhahood? So this is why we have to have bodhicitta to be able to practice Mahamudra and Dzogchen and all the teachings that are taught. We talk about all these high teachings. We talk about Mahamudra and Dzogchen, Kala Chakra, as being profound. The meaning of profound is helpful. What makes something profound is that it's really helpful. So if you are ready for it, then Mahamudra is incredibly profound. But if not, it's just words. If you are not ready for Mahamudra, then some other teaching may be the most profound for you. Meditating on impermanence may be the most profound. Meditating on loving kindness may be the most profound. So you have to practice the teaching that you're at the stage you're at right now, with the goal of being able to achieve Buddhahood, to realize Mahamudra, and so forth. But right now, you practice where you are and follow the teachings, follow the path, follow the guidance of your teacher. And this is what will bring you slowly down the path. So now I'd like to move on to the next talk by GAMPOPA. And this is a short one. The last one was long. This one is short. As for the Dharma, I would like to share with you all, to truly practice Dharma, individuals who first give up all thought of this life and then wish to liberate themselves and all sentient beings from the ocean of samsara should begin by meditating on impermanence and turning their mind away from this life. If they then meditate on loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, they will train their mind stream fully. If they do not, they will disgust people or not develop experience to realization. So whatever you do, do whatever you can to tame your mind. It is important to give all your advice to yourself. If you tame your own mind stream within, the internal signs will appear externally. That being so, to summarize, practice appearing, occurring, and being, and you will achieve all experiences, realizations, and results. Know that various appearances are untrue. Know that the mind is the non-arising Dharmakaya, and meditate. Know that various sensations are also the non-arising empty Dharmakaya, and meditate without distraction. By doing so, you will achieve all experience, realization, and results. There is no Dharma but that. So in this short little teaching, it's related. Again, he speaks about the practicing appearing, occurring, and being. But at the beginning, in the first paragraph, he talks about how we first have to start out by giving up all thoughts of this life. Just have eventually get to the point where we have no desire for the things of this lifetime, where we realize that the things of this lifetime are essentially short-term. They don't bring lasting benefit. They're pleasant while they last sometimes, and then they're gone. And when they're gone, often they leave suffering in their wake. And so we have to really be able to recognize that the things that we ordinarily think of as pleasurable are just not going to bring us much in the long term. And so we need to begin by meditating on impermanence and turning our minds away from this life, then meditate on loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta. That will train your mind stream fully. So this is like the basis that we need before we can practice, as I just mentioned. Now GAMPOPA says, what happens if you don't do that? If they do not, they will disgust people and not develop experience or realization. So if we don't go through that and we then instead begin trying to practice the high teachings, then you'll do some sort of, you might skip all these basic foundational, developing these basic foundational qualities that you have to have. Skip them. And start doing some high teaching, Mahamudra or Dzogchen or so forth. And because we don't have the foundation, we're not able to internalize it and just ends up staying as words. Then we might end up being proud about it, and we just might end up making an ass of ourselves, going around talking about, oh, well, this is the meaning of life, this is the nature of the mind, you should meditate in this way, when really you have no idea what's going on. Or you might end up thinking that you are practicing Mahamudra and you can act however you want, which is a real misunderstanding. So you have to have a good understanding of impermanence, you have to internalize impermanence, loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta. And when you do so, you should always look inside yourself. Whenever you give advice to someone, you should give it to yourself. As GAMPOPA says, it is important to give all your advice to yourself. So it's like usually we're always looking for someone else to criticize. You should do this. You should do that. Try this. Try that. That's no good. Really, when we're thinking about it, we should do it with ourselves. Look, I'm the one who, you say to yourself, why are you being so proud? Why are you being so desirous? You call yourself a Dharma practitioner. Look at those thoughts going through your mind. Aren't you embarrassed of yourself? counseling yourself, advising yourself. Or maybe you should say, oh no, you're going down the wrong path. And you better correct yourself. Remember loving kindness and compassion, or whatever advice you need to give yourself. But if you give your advice outside and you never look inside, then you're just going to be annoying, frankly. So it's always important to only give your advice to yourself. If you tame your own mind fully, the internal signs will appear externally. So you do what you can to train yourself, and then gradually you'll develop the qualities outside. So I'd like to go through one more talk today. I'll read the talk again. This is the 10th talk. As for the Dharma, I would like to share with you all, to truly practice the Dharma, it is important to turn your own mind away from this world and meditate on loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta. Never forget the thought, I'll free all sentient beings from suffering, bring them to happiness, and bring them to perfect Buddhahood. It is important to focus on the benefit of sentient beings from the depths of your heart without any wish for yourself. So do not give up on sentient beings. If you give up on a sentient being, you will part from both the Mahayana Dharma and the spiritual friend, so it is a grave wrong. Selfishness and considering people enemies are inappropriate. In terms of the secret mantra, all sentient beings are the male and female deities by nature. So how could it be right to feel afflictions toward a deity? In terms of Mahamudra and Dzogchen, the appearances of one's own mind are the light, ornament, or display of the greatness of the ultimate Dharmakaya. How could it be right to feel afflictions towards the light, ornament, and so forth of one's own mind, the Dharmakaya? Instead of it being solely for the sake of your own mind, we must purify all beings' obscurations of body, speech, and mind. Thus, for sentient beings' sake, we must dedicate to wandering beings all the virtue we have done with body, speech, and mind. To sum up the practice of that, the imprints have been with us for a long time, so we must concentrate on practice until we know that whatever appears is an illusion. Since we inherently have the 5 poisons, we must devote ourselves to practice until we can take the afflictions as the path. Because the end of time is far off, we must practice until samsara has been emptied. The imprints have been too familiar for too long, so practice until you know that whatever appears is an illusion. This means that the imprints precede actions, the imprints follow the actions, and the imprints are right with the actions. In this way, the imprints function in all 3 times. So take everything, however it may appear, as illusory by nature. By doing so, attachment to appearances as true will go away, disappearing like mist. We inherently have the 5 poisons, so we must practice until we can take the afflictions as the path. We inherently have hatred. Even though it is non-arising, it is inherent. So when hatred merely arises, we say it arises even though it is non-arising. Merely knowing from meditation that hatred is non-arising and is a dream and illusion is taking it as the path. Know that it is the same for all 5 afflictions. When you know that you are not tainted by the 5 poisons, you have taken them as the path. The 5 poisons endure long, so we must apply ourselves until samsara has been emptied. As a general characteristic of the 3 realms, samsara has no beginning. But for an individual being, one can say that samsara has a beginning because when they awaken to Buddhahood, the beginning and end occur. That is all it is. Likewise, we are practicing for the sake of all sentient beings of the 3 realms and must meditate. We must meditate until we gain a stronghold ourselves. In the short term, when good and bad occur, there is the danger the bad might distract us and carry us backward. For example, if you extricate the rest of the elephant but not its tail, you have to go back for its tail. So we must meditate until we have severed the ties to samsara. There is no dharma but that. So here in this talk, again, it begins with the same point I've been repeating today, and that I think I've said a few times in the past few days, that we have to start with revulsion loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta. These are critical. And then he talks about how do we actually think of sentient beings? Because what happens often is we think we're practicing compassion, we think we've practicing bodhicitta, and then we see other sentient beings, and we react to them, generally speaking, in one of three ways. The one way is that we get attracted to them. We feel desire for them. The other way is that we feel aversion for them. We don't like them. We want to get rid of them. The third way is that we just completely ignore them. We don't even recognize that they're there. That's delusion. So when we deal with ordinary sentient beings, what happens is that we like the ones that we're attracted to. We don't like the ones that we feel aversion to, and we just don't care about the others. And because we don't care about them, we'll do anything. We just don't care. But doing so is actually not the Mahayana attitude. We have to be able to feel equally for all sentient beings. So it's really easy. For example, if you see a really cute, well-behaved child with this beautiful smile, clear eyes, smart, helpful, just a great little kid, it's so easy to feel love for that little kid because they're just, oh, that's such a sweet kid. And yet, that's one person, of course. So it's easy to feel love for that kid. And then when you've got the person who's like really annoying, and for many of us, maybe it's like someone at work, maybe it's someone that you just can't avoid in your daily lifetime. Often it's a political leader. So whatever political leader, and for most of us in most countries, unfortunately, the leaders of our countries are just people we don't like. Or often many people don't like the leaders of their countries. And so, but we should have the same feeling for those leaders of our countries as we have for that little child. Exactly the same. And then there's that whole mass of other people that we just don't think about and don't care about. They're the people we ignore as we walk down as we go through a town. We drive by this. If you're driving by a poor neighborhood, you see people there and you just don't care. You just don't think about them. You see it so much you're inert. It's not that you're a bad person. It's just that we don't think about them. We're not used to it. Before the pandemic, I used to really enjoy going on the MTR, the subway in Hong Kong, because you see all sorts of people. And what I found is that there are basically these three types of people. There are the really attractive people, the young, beautiful people. Then there are the kind of unattractive people, or kind of the people you kind of look at, oh, I'm not sure about that person. There are fewer of those than the attractive people. And then there's just the whole rest of other people, the ordinary people who aren't particularly attractive, they're not particularly unattractive. So what happens when you're on a train like this, it's filled with these different types of people, is that automatically it's so easy to just start looking at the attractive people. And you're not seeing them for who they are. You're seeing them for what you want to see. When you end up looking at the unattractive people, the kind of scary looking people, or whatever the people are, and you feel kind of an aversion to that person, sometimes like there's a kind of crazy person or something, not very often in Hong, but sometimes. So you got this kind of feeling, get away. And then there's just a whole bunch of people that you aren't even looking at. But really the idea is that all sentient beings are the same and wanting to be happy. Doesn't matter whether they're attractive, unattractive, or ordinary, because actually if you got to know any of these people, they might end up being completely different than you think. We just don't know them. We're seeing what we project upon them. We're not seeing them as they are. And so if we can train ourselves so that we're able to actually see all people in exactly the same way, then that's the beginning of that. So instead of approaching people as being people we like, people we don't like, or people we don't care about, we need to be able to appreciate all people and all other beings as well as being sentient beings who we need to bring to Buddhahood. Not only are they sentient beings who we need to bring to Buddhahood, these are the sentient beings who are going to help us get to Buddhahood, because we can't get to Buddhahood without them. So like Shantideva said, whenever we see a sentient being, we should feel like, we should think to ourselves, it's because of this being that I'm going to awaken to Buddhahood. And so for that reason, we must never give up on any sentient being, not even the presidents of our country, the prime ministers of our countries, the people we don't like, not even the people we don't like, no matter how far gone they seem to be. We may not be in a position to do anything to help them. And if we're not in a position to do anything to actually help them, we can at least think to ourselves to make the prayer. May I be able to do something to help this being come to Buddhahood in the future, no matter what you think of them. No matter what you think of what they've done, at least make the prayer. In the future, may I have the capacity to be able to help this being. If you do that, you have not given up on the sentient being, on that sentient being. And if you do not, and you give up on that sentient being, if you say, enough, I'm never going to do anything to help that sentient being ever again, you give up on them, then you've broken your bodhisattva vow. How could that be right? So that's thinking about it in terms of the Mahayana. And then when we think about it in terms of the secret mantra Vajrayana, when we practice the Vajrayana, like we do visualization practices. So I've been talking about the medicine Buddha as my example of a visualization practice. When we meditate on the medicine Buddha, we visualize ourselves, we visualize the medicine Buddha in front of ourselves, and then the medicine Buddha has the whole retinue. So there are the bodhisattvas, or there are the 7 medicine Buddha brothers, there are the 16 bodhisattvas, there are the various protectors and great kings, Yaksha chiefs and so forth, and they're all there with their retinues. And so when you look in the mandala of the medicine Buddha, there are just actually bazillions of beings. There are millions and billions of beings. So when we really train in medicine Buddha practice, if you're doing medicine Buddha practice every day, then when you do your session as well as you can, then when you get up from your session, you get up and you remember that each being you see has Buddha nature. And the pure form of that Buddha nature is being the deity in the mandala. Each being is the medicine Buddha. Each being is one of the medicine Buddha brothers or one of the bodhisattvas. They're all each one of the deities. So you look at each of the deities in this way. And so then if you're going to feel attachment or aversion or ignorance toward a deity, how could that be right, as GAMPOPA says? So that's when we're looking at it in the Vajrayana, and we see all sentient beings. Because they all have Buddha nature, all sentient beings are the deities in the mandalas. Because of that, we should view them in a pure way, which means that there's no way that we should have greed, hatred, or ignorance or delusion towards them. And then when we think about beings in terms of Mahamudra, then the appearances of sentient beings are nothing other than the appearances of our own mind. Being so, they are nothing other than the appearances of the Dharmakaya. All sentient beings are nothing other than the Dharmakaya. So for that reason, how could it be right to regard them with either attachment or lust, or with aversion or hatred, or with delusion, or even scorn? So this is why we have to really be careful to view all sentient beings equally. And the root of doing this is to start out by training ourselves now in loving kindness and compassion and bodhicitta impartially for all sentient beings. And so that is the main training that we have to do. It's something that Gampopa says at the beginning of almost every talk. It's something that I'm saying at the beginning of almost every talk. You might be a little bit sick about it, or you might be sick of hearing it, but you shouldn't. You should think about it over and over again. This is really an important point, because if you think it's something, what can I do to really help my Dharma practice? That's said in many different sutras. The Buddha said in many sutras, he said, Subhuti, or whoever he was speaking to, there is only one thing that you need to train in. What is that one thing? It is great compassion. So you develop your great compassion, impartial and equal for all sentient beings, and then you'll be able to see all sentient beings. And when we do our practice, then we are doing our practice not only for our own sake. As GAMPOPA said, instead of it being solely for the sake of our own mind, we must purify the beings of all beings, obscurations of body, speech, and mind. So when we're doing our practice, we think to ourselves, not only, you usually think, okay, I'm an ordinary sentient being, I need to purify myself. But we have to have the vaster attitude. By me doing this practice, may I purify the obscurations of all sentient beings. By my practice, may all sentient beings develop the qualities of Buddhahood. So we must dedicate to all wandering Buddhas beings the virtue we have done with body, speech, and mind. So basically, we have really strong imprints from beginningless time, imprints of the afflictions, habits, ways of thinking. And what we need to do is we need to overcome them slowly by our practice. They're there. So we need to devote ourselves to practice until we can really overcome the afflictions and the other obscurations. And so, as Gampopa says, because the end of time is far off, we must practice until samsara has been emptied. So if we're going to practice until samsara has been emptied, we've got a long time ahead of ourselves. You might think to yourselves, why should I do it if it's going to be a long time away? Well, it's because if you don't practice now, you're still going to be in samsara until it's been emptied, only you're going to be suffering that entire time. Whereas if you start now and you make some progress in this lifetime, eventually, sooner rather than later, you're going to achieve some realization, and then you won't be experiencing the pains of samsara as suffering, and you will be truly able to help other sentient beings. So this is why it is important to practice from now on as much as we can. So start with something you can do. If you can only do 100 manis a day, start with 100 manis a day. And after a week or 2 weeks, when you feel like you can do a few hundred more, do a few hundred more. But take it slowly, gradually, build up gradually, and before you know it, you'll find yourself making progress along the path. So this, I think, is enough for this afternoon's talk. And I would like to thank you all very much for tuning in for this talk again. I appreciate your giving me the opportunity to give these talks, and I wish all of you well. So let's conclude today's talk by now doing what Gampopa said and dedicating all of the virtue of teaching and listening to the Dharma, so that we should think to ourselves, because of doing this, we're gaining some sort of understanding. And because of that understanding, we can contemplate it, we can meditate upon it. May this become the root that we can purify ourselves of all the obscurations, and not only purify ourselves, but may we also purify all sentient beings of all their obscurations too. And by doing this, by purifying all our obscurations, may we all develop the qualities of Buddhahood. So thinking in this way, please recite the dedication of merit. Osanam de tam je simpani tobne nye pedranam pamchene Kyegana che barna trobai sipe tsole dro wadro warsho. Thank you.